of prayer and there's the place of work, what you also have to do. And I think we have significantly covered that in the first segment. So there are things that for the kids to do, there are things for the parents to do. However, there is something for government as well to do. So as Nigerians anticipate the procurement of COVID-19 vaccines, the Director General of the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control has warned against the circulation of fake coronavirus vaccines in the country. Some people say they even saw videos.
Trust Nigerians. Very resourceful people.
Do you have a factory somewhere?
No, I don't have a factory, but I'm just praying that, you know, we learn to put this resourcefulness into more positive things.
And perhaps, okay, well, anyway, let's get into this conversation. It's very interesting, the angle you're coming from, Alera. Well, joining us this morning for this conversation is the Director General of NAFDAC, Professor Moji Adeyeye. She joins us virtually from Lagos here, as well as Dr. Basi Oposen, who is the Director, Disease Control and Immunization of the Nigeria Primary Health Center. Thank you very much for being a part of this conversation, Doctor. But let me start with Professor Adeyeye. Well, when all of this began, we've had, you would remember, we had a good number of conversations. And one of those times, you said our low-hanging fruits was herbs. You know, if we're going to look at some local solutions, you know, herbs and stuff like that, those were the what you call the low-hanging fruits at the time. And you even said that there were options then, there were efforts being made to develop some local solutions back at the time. I think it was about February, March, April, or thereabout last year. How far with that?
Good morning. It's good to be here with you. Last year, 2020, is a year that all of us will never forget. Concerning herbal medicines, it is very true that it is a low-hanging fruit. And NAFDAC started an initiative 2019 March. We inaugurated the Herbal Medicine Product Committee that is made up of researchers and herbal practitioners. And I knew that if there is no link, if there is no bridging of the two entities, herbal medicine will not move forward in Nigeria. So that was the purpose of creating the Herbal Medicine Product Committee. And a lot has happened since that time. COVID, of course, came. So we went virtual. We've had a series of meetings. But what I needed to do with the two bodies, the researchers and the practitioners, is to create trust. The practitioners do not have, or did not, things have improved, did not have trust with the researchers, that sometimes they will just walk away with their data. So we started in NAFDAC educating the two groups on intellectual property or respect for information. Respect for information or making it confidential. So we went through that. We invited the trademark office. We invited the patent office, NOTAB, to come and talk with the two bodies. After that, we invited patent attorneys for webinars. And both the practitioners and the researchers became more familiar with information, protection of information, intellectual property. So that training had to take place. And we've encouraged them, meaning NAFDAC has encouraged them to submit their applications. NAFDAC also made it a little simpler to follow or to follow our guidelines or guidance. We put a lot of guidance on our web on how to register a product, if you want to do clinical trial, what to do. So that helped a lot. And also the content of the application for herbal medicines. Because we don't want to stay where we were before. We wanted to add science to whatever was happening. So we have many products now that have been submitted, or applications that have been submitted. Some have been given approval for listing, some given compliance directives for some corrections, some are waiting inspections because we want to be sure that the herbal environments where they are making the medicines is conducive for good hygiene and whatnot. So a lot has taken place since March last year.
Yeah, Prof, when you talk about herbs, I believe that one can also put vegetables in this category. And there's this post going around that crane has flavonoids that aid the absorption of zinc in the body. Zinc can enter the virus-infected cells and stop coronavirus from reproducing. Is there any truth in that? Any merit?
Yes, actually, we take for granted vegetables or plants that God has surrounded us with. Many of the plants have flavonoids, antioxidants, trace minerals good for the body. We take too much for granted and we assume that they just food, you know. I come from a small town in Osun where we eat breadfruit. Breadfruit is a fruit, but we use it to as yam. We pound it as pounded yam, you know, but it's breadfruit. There have been reports that many people in our hometown don't have diabetes. I've not looked into that research, but it's possible that there is some anti-diabetic, content in that breadfruit. The same thing with pawpaw. Pawpaw has some anti-sickling properties, especially ripe pawpaw. So these are things that we take for granted or we don't know. Sometimes we cook our vegetables, we kill what God has already put in it by over-steaming it and whatnot. So there are many things that are natural that if we eat right, they can actually improve our health. So you are right with some zinc, getting into the cells, helping with antiviral, whatever, or cutting down the viral replication and so on. So there is a lot there, in terms of literature. We just need to pay more attention to them. Thank you.
Oh, by the way, the post said cream, but we all know it in this part of the world as ewedu, ordinary ewedu. Please eat plenty of ewedu.
Yes. Well, I'm a foodie. I'm a foodie because I believe in natural things, and I was raised up with herbs.
Just one moment. Just one moment, Prof. It's actually one question that I wanted to ask you before we go to Dr. Bassi in Abuja. Why is it that, most of the time we hear what you have just said now of some herbal, some content, some mineral content, some creative contents in some of our vegetables in Africa that aid certain things, aid healing and stuff like that. How come it would seem like we don't talk much about them? How come? Is it a challenge of the scientific data against the realities of people are going through, of what people are going through, what people are experiencing? From what you have just said, is that a challenge we have here? Scientific data versus reality or experience?
It is science, and that is the reason for forming this herbal medicine product committee, because the herbalist knows a lot about how the herbal medicines work. They don't know how to make sure that the dosing, the toxicology effect and whatnot, how to put all those together for safety. The researchers know how to do the safety studies and whatnot, but the two weren't coming together. And that is why we started the Herbal Medicine Product Committee. Now what we have done is to pair them together. NAFDAC created a confidentiality agreement for them to sign. They said that NAFDAC should witness the signing. So we paired herbalists and researchers together. And as we speak, they've submitted applications, research, proposals together to develop products. So the herbalist now bringing his own knowledge and the researcher bringing his own scientific background. So we are going somewhere. And I believe that in 2-3 years, you will see products, herbal medicinal products being developed together between, with the herbalist and the practitioners collaboration. So
right.
it is because of research. Yeah, thank you.
Well, just to be clear, when you hear herbalist, some people have in mind that it's just one rookie somewhere. It's just people who deal in herbs. You can check up that word yourself. But let's go to Dr. Okpoze in Abuja. Doctor, what's been your experience, as Director of Disease Control and Immunization of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, going around talking to people, because that definitely is a much talked about subject right now, people being willing to take some form of immunization or the other, especially now that we're talking about vaccines for COVID-19. Has that conversation begun? First of all, what's been your experience and what are the challenges we are likely to face at this time on this matter?
Okay. Good morning, Nigerians. The subject matter, as you're saying, is the one that is really now trending in most of our media space. For me, my first experience and joy is the team I'm working with. At the national level, we have the technical working group to introduce the COVID-19 vaccine. And that technical working group is chaired by the Executive Director, Dr. Faisal. And then we have all our partners, NAFDAC, the DG is here with us. I want to appreciate the contribution from NAFDAC to the team, NCDC, all our global developmental partners and donors, CSOs, professional bodies, they are members of the team. And the team meets on a daily basis. That is one aspect. The joy I have and the experience, like you asked, is working with these great men and women, because on a daily basis, the discussions that comes up from the meetings and the responsibilities reassures me that Nigerians are in safe hands. Aside the technical working group,
just one moment.
Strategic team.
Just one moment, Dr. Okpoze. Granted, you have a fantastic team working with you, but the question is actually, what's been your experience on the field? How do people receive the communication that you sent to them? What's the nature of your interface with the people at the various levels of life in Nigeria, the urban center, the rural areas, the suburban centers? What's been your experience, and what are the likely challenges when it comes to giving people COVID-19 vaccines?
Okay. For that, on the risk communication, we have a fantastic team that is also leading that, which we support that team working with them. We have had interface with the health educators from all the states. We've had interface with medical association leads. We've had interface with journalists. Yesterday we had interface with religious leaders, and so many other teams that we meet, like you've said. And with the radio stations, we also had live radio programs. The things that comes up from these interactions is the fact that there are a lot of negative information in this space there. that people ask a lot of questions. People are already, some of them are saying, we will not take the vaccines when it comes. From the news that some of them will say it will change the DNA, to those that say it will cause infertility, to those that say the side effects, people will die, and all sorts. So these are the information that are coming in, and from the interactions with them and explanation, telling Nigerians that the vaccines that will be used in this country are safe, are effective. We have seen a lot of people beginning to key into it and accept with us that, yes, these vaccines are safe. And one other area I'm also seeing is that some states are already saying, oh, we are having information, the vaccine you are going to give us will not be enough, we will need enough. That means a lot of people are getting set to receive the vaccines. So we are seeing more of people who are shifting from, we will not take the vaccines, to those who are saying, we are going to take the vaccines. And the DG NAFDAC, they say online, also have repeatedly also said and reassured Nigerians that no vaccine will be used in this country that has not been further evaluated and certified fit for use in Nigeria. So I want to use this opportunity to reassure Nigerians, those that are not yet convinced, tell them the vaccines, COVID-19 vaccines to be used in Nigeria are safe and effective. Thank you.
Dr. Okoze, we'll take a short break, and Professor Adeyeye, we'll take a short break now to take a few messages, and when we return, a number of other questions that will hopefully put people's minds at rest on this matter. Just stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Professor Adeyeye, let me ask you, first of all, what are those challenges that you have seen, especially in the light of the information that came from NAFDAC last week, that the agency, or this week, that the agency has not approved any COVID-19 vaccines, and where you had to say out loud that you have not received any application from vaccine manufacturers, and therefore no vaccine had been approved by NAFDAC. What informed that?
Okay, is that question for me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yes. What led to that is the fact that we now have fake vaccines in the market, online market. And knowing the fact that COVID vaccine is new, and there is no commodity, whether new or old, medical commodity, drugs, vaccines, medical devices. There is no commodity like that can enter the country without the approval of NAFDAC. Let me tell you what happens at the beginning of the pandemic. There were so many people ordering testing kits. Sometimes they will say they want to donate to PTF, they want to donate to NCDC, they want to do this, but they didn't go through us. All testing kits are not equal. There are some that don't work at all. So we don't want the same thing to happen with COVID vaccine. First of all, they are limited in terms of the number of vaccines that have been approved, and no vaccine can be used without going through NAFDAC approval. That is what the regulatory agency in every country is supposed to do. So people started talking about, primary health is bringing 100,000 doses of vaccines. Yeah, there's nothing wrong in bringing 100,000 doses of vaccines. That is their primary job. However, that vaccine must pass through NAFDAC. We have to use scientific approach to ensure that the monitoring of it, the pharmacovigilance of it, once it is given to the patient, will be properly done. And primary health and NAFDAC and NCDC have been working on this for about maybe 2.5 months, 3 months, to ensure that we work together for the sake of our people. Because COVID vaccine is not ordinary vaccine. even after the phase 3 clinical trials that were done, there are still things that even the manufacturer doesn't understand. Because what you give to 20,000, 25,000 people may reveal some things there, but when you give to the larger population, you may start seeing some other things. When you give to a different population, Black Africans, you may be seeing different things. That is one of the reasons why it is extremely important to let the public know that NAFDAC will do the due diligence to ensure that the vaccine is well evaluated before it is made available or before it is approved, and therefore it can be used after. So it is a matter of time. Some paperwork was not done well. So that is where we are right now, primary health and NAFDAC. And within a week or so, we should get that paperwork ready so that the manufacturer can then approach NAFDAC for the necessary submission and then review that will follow after.
Yeah, Prof, is NAFDAC doing anything about these people who you say are peddling these fake vaccines?
NAFDAC is doing a lot. Our investigation and enforcement directorate works round the clock. The federal task force is domiciled in NAFDAC. And the mandate of the federal task force is to go after fake medicines and unwholesome food. The federal task force is supposed to work with the state task forces. There are some state task forces that are active, some are not active. Nonetheless, NAFDAC still does its own job. Let me give you an example. We were in Asaba just before the pandemic late last year, and there were tetanus toxoid vaccines stored under 40 degrees centigrade temperature, 40 degrees, something that is supposed to be in the freezer. So these are vaccines that people are, I don't know, very likely fake, but at least it's labeled tetanus toxoid vaccine. But it may not be fake. People just handle them carelessly. So our work is already cut up for us. So we go after them, we seize the consignments, we prosecute, we fine, we destroy the product. So it is a 24/7 activity for us. So our investigation and enforcement directorate does that 24/7. Thank you.
Well, is NAFDAC also interested in the storage state of condition of these vaccines when they get to Nigeria? Because it is one thing to bring them in their potent state. It's another thing for those vaccines to get to the areas, the localities where they will be dispensed to people. Is NAFDAC also doing anything about that to ensure compliance at the state levels?
Yes, we are. Part of what we do, our vaccine biologics lab, is to maintain the cold chain. And there are some packages that will actually have cold chain temperature indicators so that throughout the supply chain, that temperature must be maintained. If it is not maintained, there will be an indicator there to show that it is not maintained. Therefore, the quality might have been compromised. Primary health, let me talk about COVID vaccines first. Primary health is planning to have cold packs that will move the vaccines from one place to the other for the COVID vaccine. NAFDAC post-marketing directorate also will be monitoring the cold chain security or cold chain maintenance, so that when it moves from market to market or town to town, rather, that security is kept. And if it is not, it has to be pulled out of the supply chain. That is what the Post-Marketing Directorate of NAFDAC will be doing for the COVID vaccine. And that is why Primary Health and NAFDAC have been working together. As we speak, the two agencies are being trained by UK Medicine Regulatory Control Organization, MHRA. 40 members of our staff and 80 members of primary health being trained in pharmacovigilance. But we have a lot in common and a lot of opportunities to work together. So both agencies will be monitoring the cold chain maintenance.
Health then. Dr. Opozen, these challenges is much talked about in Nigeria, especially when it comes to dispensing these vaccines in the proper state that they ought to be moved around. So what's the plan to ensure that the hopes are high? The president has said that the infrastructure of your agency is what is going to be used by government to dispense these vaccines to people all over the nation. So what is the plan? Do we have those equipment ready, or are we working towards getting them? What's the interface? Who is supposed to get all these, cold packs that NAFDAC DJ has spoken about that will be used by your team to get across to the nation? Please tell us what's the plan.
Okay, thanks. And that is why I started by talking about the structure we have on ground, the technical working group. One of the subcommittees of that technical working group is the vaccine security and safety. Now, when we look at the vaccines that will come into Nigeria, these are vaccines, one, already pre-qualified by WHO, and our own NAFDAC will evaluate it also in Nigeria and for use in the country. Those processes are on. Once the vaccines are received from the airport to the national store where the vaccines will be kept until where it goes to the states, the National Logistic Working Team and the subcommittee of the Technical Working Group on COVID-19 introduction have done a lot of work already to ensure that these vaccines that are received will be stored safe, transported safe, and delivered safe to Nigerians. There are two groups of vaccines. For the mRNA vaccines like the Pfizer and Moderna, this requires ultra-cold chain equipment -20 to -70, 80 degrees centigrade. Most other non-mRNA vaccines will use the +2 to +8 degrees centigrade temperature. For those +2, for the mRNA vaccine, which is the first batch that when it comes in, pass through the NAFDAC evaluation, it will be stored at the ultra-cold chain equipment requirement. The National Logistic Team have worked hard to ensure that the ultra-cold chain equipment is installed at the national store. So there is enough readiness for that. And then also, the arrangement, the plan for these vaccines to be stored at the state safely and administered to our health workers have also been concluded. We even have instances of some states, I mentioned, for instance, Bauchi State, that are very informed us. They went out on their own to also buy the ultra-cold chain equipment. For these mRNA vaccines that needs the ultra-cold chain equipment, the -20 to -80, we have 100,000 doses of vaccine that will come in that will require that. The subsequent ones that are coming in, most probably most of those vaccines that will be considering based on the certification that will also pass through the NAFDAC evaluation, will be more of the +2 to +8 degrees centigrade. And for the +2 to +8 degrees centigrade is already established in all, we have that in all our health facilities that offers routine immunization in Nigeria. That is the temperature we store most of our vaccines, even at the health facilities that offer routine immunization. So that will not be a problem. And then even with the Pfizer, Moderna vaccines, at the point of usage, they can be stored at +2 to +8 for a maximum of 5 days for Pfizer and up to 30 days for Moderna. The arrangements on how this will be delivered to Nigerians in safe and effective potent condition has been concluded. For instance, when the 100,000 doses is received, the strategy to be used to deliver this to the priority frontline health workers who are at the intensive units handling and treating cases is that at the state level, for instance, we're going to have 3 vaccination sites, and at each of the local government, 1 vaccination site, and each of these sites have up to 4 vaccination posts will be well spaced to obtain IPC. The structure that is set up in the strategy can take up to 1.2 million people administered using those sites. But we'll be looking at 50,000 health workers immunized using that capacity so that there's enough spacing, the IPC skills and protocols guidelines are well followed, and our health workers are administered. So at that point of administration, both the health workers and other Nigerians that are target group, the vaccines, the plans that the logistic working team is putting in place will ensure that from the point of receipt, storage, transportation to the site, and up to administration, the vaccines to be given to Nigerians will be at potent stage to give to Nigerians to stimulate immunity. Thank you.
Dr. Oposa, will these vaccines be sold to Nigerians?
Alero, just as our children are given vaccine free, all the routine immunizations, the COVID-19 vaccine will be given free to Nigerians. It will be given free. And there are a lot of efforts to ensure that when this vaccine comes in, accountability will be a watchword. In each of those sites, we have our security operatives, we have the health workers, the monitors from both the partners and government staff also being on guard to ensure that these vaccines are given free to Nigerians and they are not diverted.
But there is a question that came up, on my mind when Prof was talking the other time, Dr. Oposa, and that's the fact that they will test, of course. NAFDAC is going to test to be sure that the behavior of the vaccines in other climes it produces the same expected result in the bodies of Black Africans. So is there a plan for follow-up on people after the vaccine has been administered?
Yes. Now, once the vaccines are administered, it's starting from both the communication and the pharmacovigilance, like the DG NAFDAC mentioned. There's a lot of, during the training, the health workers, the epidemiologists, and everyone that is involved in this, and all the stakeholders involved in the pharmacovigilance, and as the DG mentioned currently, people are being trained on that, 80 from the agency and 40 from NAFDAC. And then the epidemiologists are being trained, and everyone. Once the vaccination is given, during the vaccination itself exercise, at each of those sites that I mentioned, there will be an active surveillance site ongoing there. And then will be a follow-up plan on what people should do during the point of vaccination. The people will be counseled, or if you have any feeling or fever or anything and you're worried, then you can also report back. So post-vaccination, there are also plans to ensure that Nigerians are followed up for any possible complaint that might come from them. But also just to mention also that the team is keenly watching on the countries that have started vaccination. For instance, the Pfizer is already being used in, for instance, the US, where about 60 million persons, or 6 million persons already vaccinated with it. We are following up with the trends and to see the minor things that comes up from there, which is common. Even like there are some people, they take ordinary paracetamol, they might have fever or headache or something else when it's supposed not to be the case. So the country and the plan that is ongoing and the training that is ongoing will ensure that even after the vaccination, we are following up with Nigerians. And just also to mention to Nigerians, we have 4 phases of introduction. The first phase, where this 100,000, once it passed the evaluation, will be administered to Nigerians, and there will be a second phase in Q2. a third phase in Q3, and a fourth phase in Q4. This is based majorly on the expected dates of arrivals of vaccines. And throughout this period, of course, from the phase 1 to the phase 2 and the phase 3, Nigerians will be able to also on their own speak loud and say, oh, okay, all the people took the vaccine, we can see it's accepted amongst us. And to reassure the team that we are aware of Nigerians, prominent Nigerians, so many who have traveled outside the country already to receive these vaccines. We have a lot of them. The communication team is already putting together a documentary on that, to show these people they have gone out, received these vaccines, they are back, and they are all safe. We promise Nigerians the vaccines to be used are safe, and there will be follow-ups for possibility, and to, at the end of it all, be able to give a full accountability report to Nigerians. These are how many Nigerians we immunized, and these were the findings after the vaccination, so that people would not be scared of receiving the vaccine in the next phases.
Yeah, just before we let you go, we know, and you need to educate us, that there is a distance between the first dose and the second dose. The word out there, some 30 days in some cases, in between, 45 days in between. If you can confirm that, what are they to do or not to do between the first dose and the second dose?
It's like every drug has its timing, how it should be taken. Likewise, vaccine. For instance, paracetamol, you say 8 hourly. Every 8 hours, you repeat. For vaccines, for instance, pentavalent vaccine, the child is supposed to take 3 doses at intervals of 4 weeks. For the COVID-19 vaccines, based on the manufacturers, the instructions are also clear. For the Pfizer that will come in, the first 100,000 doses we are expecting, the guidelines from manufacturers for now for that particular vaccine is 21 days interval, where the first dose will be received and 21 days after the second dose will be received. So we will definitely, because after the first phase with the Pfizer, from the second phases and the third phases, the vaccines that will come in will not just be the Pfizer. There are other alternative vaccines, because the government targets to immunize 70% of Nigerians between this year and 2022, and that translates to about 149.6 million Nigerians. So we will have vaccines that are coming in from different companies that will pass through the NAFDAC test to be given to Nigerians. So the interval between the first and the second dose will depend on the manufacturer's instruction. And also to mention that already we know that the Johnson & Johnson is coming up with a vaccine that is 1 dose. So in such instance, the person will just receive 1 dose. So the minister, the ED, the DG NAFDAC, everyone is working to look at these other alternatives so that we fast-track the quantity of vaccines that come into Nigeria for Nigerians to be
almost
vaccinated.
Completely run out of time, Doctor. But just before we go, Prof, can you quickly tell us, how soon do we expect the rollout of these vaccines to the general public?
As soon as NAFDAC gets the dossier from the company, from the first company, Pfizer, it will not take us more than a week to review the dossier, because we will be relying on what others have done before, FDA, EMEA, European Medicine Agency, UK. So we use what is called reliance to expedite the review. And once that is done, we're going to also have another external body to quickly go over what we did in NAFDAC, the COVID vaccine committee. But all in all, it shouldn't take more than 7 working days. After that, the vaccines can come into the country.
Well, we have to thank you very much for your contributions this morning to the program. Professor Moji Adeyeye is the Director General of the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, as well as Dr. Basi Opozen, who is Director Disease Control and Immunization of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. Thank you so much for your time and thoughts this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.